So I'd like to say thank you to Sharon and Larry for inviting me here today, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you and to share my story and my journey. So my journey sort of started about 20 years ago. I'd been away on holidays in Bali with family and a big group of friends. I came back from Bali, being on the plane with probably lots of people and, air conditionings have been going all the time. I actually ended up with quite a bad flu and it turned into a chest infection. So then went to the doctors and got some antibiotics, and the antibiotics then they kick in your immune system and just continued on with normal life. So when you actually have any type of compromised immune system, your white blood cells, they say, are non-selective. So the white blood cells are actually, they're fighting off the infection that I had in my chest, and then I thought it was cleared up, and then they actually started to attack my lungs, which is it can be quite common that they're non-selective, so they don't actually turn off once they have that infection is gone. So I actually then had a cough for quite some time. I coughed like I'd been smoking for years, and I've never smoked in my life. And I went backwards and forwards to the doctors, and then they diagnosed me with having asthma. So there's no history of asthma in my family at all. So I just went along with the doctors, didn't think about getting a second opinion. And so over a course of about 5 years, going backwards and forwards, getting all the asthma medications, which is sort of start on Ventolin, then your Flexitide and Seretide, and they're all puffers and preventers to clear your airways. So about 5 years going through that, just thinking, I've got asthma, it's quite common, and never really thought much more of it. But I actually had started losing weight, and I was struggling to do sort of normal activities like climbing upstairs and walking up and down hills, all that type of thing. It really slowed me down. So back and forwards again to my GP, put me on prednisolone, which is your cortisone steroids, backwards and forwards again, and actually saw one of my GP's doctors in the clinic because my doctor wasn't available, and he was one of the first doctors that actually, after 5 years, took out a stethoscope and actually listened to my chest.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So something so simple that could have been picked up so much earlier than what it was. It was quite a shock that I never realised, to say to the doctor, should you listen to my chest? And no, the question just didn't arise. So then after that, I saw my doctor on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at the doctor's at 12 o'clock. He said, I'm just going to send you for a routine chest x-ray. So I then went and had an x-ray at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the doctor rang me at home at about 4:30, 5 o'clock that night, and he said, Martina, you're not well. And I said, oh yeah, I know I'm not well. I said, this asthma is just slowing me down. I said, the expression I used is, this asthma's killing me, because I'm always very active, love being active, and just work, normal work activities, always being out and about. And I had 3 children, that just really slowed me down. So after he got the results from my chest x-ray, he said to me that he was going to send me to see a specialist, and he said he had an appointment booked for me for 7:30 on the Wednesday night. So within 24 hours, I've actually seen a specialist. His name was Dr. Michael Ho. He's a respiratory specialist, and he's in Noble Park, just near Southeastern Hospital. So I went to visit Michael. My husband came with me, and he listened to my chest, looked at the x-rays and the reports, and he said, I'm just going to, do some more investigation. I'm going to send you for more x-rays, CT scans, lung function, and a series of blood tests. So did all of that. Then went back to Dr. Ho about 2 weeks later. he then sat me down and, you know, had a little chat about what his findings were. Said that, you know, all the results are back, and he said to me, one day I'm going to need a double lung transplant.
Oh dear.
At the time, I actually didn't even know what that meant. Yeah, so to me, I'm thinking, what does it mean? He explained the process. You know, he said you know, in the future, could be, you know, so many years, he would just monitor me for the next couple of years and see how we go. So I was with Dr. Ho for at least 2 years. In that time, I had lots of hospital admissions. He then gave me a choice of doing either just a bronchoscopy, and that's when they actually just they wash your lungs and they get samples of your lungs. And then he said, no, you had to investigate more and wanted to do a biopsy. So he did a biopsy of one of my lungs, and then I just thought, you know, okay, back to work the next day. But then what they do, they actually cut a small piece of the bottom of your lung for testing and sent that off to be tested. And then I ended up with a collapsed lung because I went back to work too early. I'm probably not the most clever people. I'm always active, and I just think, got to get back to work. I used to be a registered builder with my husband at the time, and I ran the family business, and he was a bricklayer and I was the builder. So I actually built my first home at 19. Built and designed my first home. So from doing that, we became registered builders, and that was always the business that we ran together. And if anyone rang my husband, he'd say, ring Martina, she's the builder. He just liked doing the bricklaying. Yeah, not all the, I always said that building houses is a problem-solving exercise, and that's what it is like. But it's challenging but rewarding as well. Yes, yeah. So then I, you know, just continued on working, got through having one collapsed lung, and then, you know, back to work again. Then probably about 3 months later, I had another collapsed lung. So once your lungs are damaged, they don't repair themselves over time. As I said, I was with Dr. Ho for at least 2 years, and he then said, we need to put myself on oxygen. So I started with portable oxygen at home, and it was, you would see they're on a trolley. So for getting around the house, I didn't need it, but I had to leave the house and do walking. That's when the portable oxygen was always with me. And the portable oxygen machine actually had a name. Her name was Oxygeny, for oxygen. Yeah. Christmas time, we used to put tinsel on it, just to make a bit of fun, saying, yep, okay, Oxygeny, here you go. You know, come outside and things like that. Then my lung function had deteriorated quite rapidly. I was actually down to 23% breathing capacity. Yeah, so that was quite low. So that's when I was actually put onto a concentrator. So I had the concentrator in the middle of the house with a 20-metre lead that I could get from one end of the house back to the concentrator and then to the other way. Yeah, so it was quite debilitating at the time. I found myself housebound, and in that time I had built another house. I couldn't, at that time, built a home, and that was about house number seven or eight. So I always say I'm a bit of a gypsy. It is the Irish in me, because I was born in Dublin. I am Irish, and yeah, that's what, you know, building houses, designing houses, set them up, landscape them, live in it for 2 to 3 years, and then on to the next one. So that's what I've always done. Then after that, couldn't find a rental property, because we had a triple-storey house. So ground level was a garage, one level was the house, and another level was the double story. So at that time, couldn't find a rental, so I just went out and bought one. Yeah, and got home, and my husband said to me, my husband at the time said, oh, did you find a rental property? I said, yes. He said, oh, how much? I said, 430. I said, oh, that's okay, 430 a week. I said, no, I just paid $430 for it. And it was a single story, flat home. It was easy to get in and out of. Yeah. So after being with Michael for two years, he then referred me to the Alfred Hospital, to the lung and heart and lung transplant clinic. They do work closely with each other, both clinics, and I met Professor Greg Snell, Professor Trevor Williams, and also Professor Glenn Watson. So you may not know this, but the Alfred Hospital is one of the 5th leading hospitals in the world in heart and lung transplants. Yeah. So I was in really good hands. Yes, yeah. So then I had to have a 3-day workup. So that's when they test you from head to toe. So you're doing everything from CT scans, nuclear medicine scans. You see a dentist, you see a dietitian, you see a psychologist. They're just from head to toe. And that 3-day workup says whether you're viable or not for a transplant. And at the time they said I was. So then I started my next journey of being a pre-transplant patient, which was also really tough. For me, getting up in the morning and just being at home, I was home alone, everyone was out working, and for me to go to the hospital, to the Alfred Hospital, was a day out. It means you're getting up, you've got a reason to get out of bed, and you're getting dressed rather than sitting in a chair for anything most of the day, and a lot of people actually avoid you when you're not well, because they say they don't know what to say to someone who's not well. But to me, you don't need to say anything. It's just a matter of call in and have a cup of tea. Yeah. So when I meet people in my life now who've gone through any type of illness, I'm very sympathetic. And the first thing I always say, and even people that I speak to on the phone in what I do now with work, create that relationship and friendship. And I always say, can I make you a meal? And or even, a pot of soup. And even through COVID, a lot of people that I worked with had COVID. I would turn up, and I called it Meals on Wheels on high heels, because I'd turn up with my basket of a lasagna, soup, fresh bread rolls, and just drop it at the door and then run. Because I avoided COVID for 2 years. Yes, yeah. Then, so after doing a workup for being viable for a transplant, every time they were trying to cross-match me at that time, so the cross-matching criteria, you actually match on blood type, tissue type, and size. And you do a lot of education classes as well. You are very well educated on what you're going to go through, and the medical side of going through an operation and becoming a transplant recipient. But they don't actually educate you on the emotional and your mental capacity to accept that you're going to be a recipient. And there is a committee that I had joined after transplant, and I'll chat with that as well. So when I was leading up to my transplant, I was actually on the waiting list for 22 months. And people used to say to me, what number are you on the list? I said, we're all number 1. There's no 1, 2, 5, 10, anything like that. And it just comes down to whether you're viable on that tissue type, blood type, and size. So I actually had 2 false alarms. So they do say that you can have false alarms, and they do, tee you up that, you sort of get that call halfway to the Alfred, you get another call, and they say it's not going to happen. You turn around and go home. It's like your family are all on, on call and that type of thing. And it's just part of what happens. Both times was only for a single lung, But the first time I said, oh, okay, I don't want a single lung, I want a double lung. And that's just me with my builder's hat on. You fix the problem the first time. You don't fix half the problem. Second time I had a false alarm, I said I would have taken anything. By the third time, I had actually used to weigh 43 kilo. As I said, my breathing capacity had gone down to about 20% by then. And I had fought my battle. I had said to them at the Alfred Hospital on a Thursday afternoon, I had an appointment with my specialist, and I said, I've fought my battle, I can't do this anymore. I said, I've made peace with myself, and my daughter was there, my husband was there, my granddaughter was there. And my daughter's listening at the door where the doctor was speaking on the phone about and mentioning my name. But anyway, I did my blood test, got my scripts, went home, and I actually had even picked out my songs for my funeral. Yeah. And I used to pretend I wasn't sick, I just couldn't breathe. Because for me, I felt if I fell apart, the whole family fell apart. Yes, yeah. So that's, you do carry that on your shoulders, yeah. And especially being a mum. Yes, yeah. So 4:45 the next morning, I was awake, lying in bed, and the phone rang. Oh, sorry. And I said, who would be ringing at this time in the morning? I answered the phone, and it was Bree from she was one of the nurses from the transplant clinic. And she said, Martina, we have the perfect set of lungs for you. Yes, yeah. So third time lucky. So I always believe in good things go in threes. So third time lucky, I was, they said, if you can be here in about an hour and a half. So you go into emergency. They said, is there anything that I wanted? And I said, I wanted to know where I'm going to be when I wake up. So we went and had a look at the ICU, the ICU part, which was only built probably 2 years before my transplant. So my transplant date was September the 11th, 2009, which is the anniversary of 9/11. Yeah, so it's quite a memorable day for many, many people, as well as myself. So I actually celebrated my 13th anniversary on September just gone, September the 11th. Yeah, so I say now I'm technically a teenager. Yeah, my granddaughter is older than me, and she always says, she just laughs and says, yes, Nana. And yes, so yeah, after having my transplant, I thought I was Superwoman. The first day, I was in ICU 4 days, in hospital on the ward, 5 East, for 10 days. So you're in hospital, I was in hospital for about 2 weeks. Went in on a Friday morning, came home on a Friday morning 2 weeks later. The moment that I walked out of the hospital, it was the first time I had could breathe fresh air for nearly 2 years. Yeah. So just walking out on a spring morning, the sunshine and fresh air, it was the most amazing moment I've ever had. Yeah, and remember it very clearly. Yeah. I always believe that I'm back for a reason. So I thought, what can I do to make a change? So there was actually, it's called the Heart and Lung Transplant Trust, and it's a committee that was formed by volunteers. It's a non-for-profit organisation. So I rang and wanted some information about the trust, and they said, would you like to come to one of the meetings? And I said, yeah, I'll come to a meeting. And it was my way of giving back. So I've actually been on the committee nearly 13 years. I was made a life member about 2 years ago, and I said, that happens to older people. And they said, no, it's for your contribution. And I said, but I would do what I do because I want to. Yes. Yeah. And it's about supporting people going through the transplant journey. It's for both pre or post operations. And they actually have a vision. So I'll just read read this out. Our vision is for a bright and active future for all of those involved in need of a heart or lung transplant. The Heart and Lung Transplant Group is volunteers who are directly connected to transplant at the Alfred Hospital and provide peer-based support for people who have had a heart or lung transplant and their families. We also identify the needs of the transplant community and transplant services at the Alfred and meet those through fundraising and practical assistance. I have been one of the main organisers for a cycle tour, and Phil Anderson is an Olympic cyclist, and he actually led both cycle tours. We did 2014 and 2016, and with both those tours, one was for 9 days and one was for 6 days, and they did one of them. The first one was started in Geelong, and it went all the way around regional Victoria, finished towards Traralgon, and then finished on at the Alfred Hospital. With both tours combined, we raised about $580,000. And yeah, that actually, most of that fundraising was to start what we call the SCAP program, which is the Second Chance Accommodation program. So we have 6 apartments at the Park Regis, and anyone that is in need of a heart or lung transplant, they actually have to be within walking distance or a short distance of the Alfred Hospital. So anyone that lives over 100 kilometres from the hospital, we actually accommodate them, and the cost for that family is $9 a day at the Park Regis Hotel. So that's been running for 8 years now, and yeah, that's one of my most rewarding programs, is giving someone a home to call, a place to call home. Yes, yeah, because you know you're not physically not well enough to work. Someone has to be your carer, so financially it's a burden on a family. I was lucky enough that I live in Berwick, so it was only a 45-minute drive to the Alfred Hospital. Yeah, but anyone over 100 kilometres, they're travelling 1 to 2 hours each way. But they had to be close enough, because after your transplant, once you're discharged, you actually have a compulsory rehab program, which you go to the Alfred gym 3 times a week. And then the 4th day, you actually do all of your appointments. So you have education sessions, you have doctor's appointments, you have blood tests, and you go through a lot of other avenues in the Alfred Hospital. It's anything from dermatology to orthopedics, all that type of thing. Yeah, it's just an ongoing journey. And people used to say to me, "Oh, you've had your transplant, you're fixed." I said, "But you're never fixed, because you're reminded every day when you're taking your medication." So you take anti-rejection medication. So that you take that twice a day, morning. It's supposed to be a 12-hour window, but I sort of just take it when I'm having breakfast and think about it at night before I go to sleep. So that's always something that never leaves you. Yeah. And it is my life-saving medication. Yeah. Also with the Heart Lung Transplant Trust, we actually educate a lot of the pre-transplant and post-transplant education sessions. So we actually, every 2 months, I actually sit, quite often myself and other people on the committee, we actually just tell our journey to people that have just come through transplant. And we want, our main reason is letting them know that they're not alone. And no, the Alfred give you all the medical side, but they don't actually give you that peer support. And that was one of the greatest things I wanted to be able to pass on to other people. And there's all the little things, with taking steroids and all that type of thing. Your hair grows everywhere. You look in the rear vision mirror and thought, "Oh my God, it looks like I've come from the planet of the apes." Yeah, but it does go away. Yeah, and you have the tremors, if you're carrying your cup of tea, you've got waves in it. But all those things, over time, they do go. And, you know, it's frightening when you're not expecting things like that. And you get that, you know, people now say after COVID they get brain fuzz, but you get that after transplant too because of the high medications that you're on. Yeah. So those medications, I started off, used to take 46 tablets a day. Now I'm down to 30, so that's pretty good. Yeah. A lot of them are vitamins as well. Yeah. So, and you know, they give you one medication, but that depletes other things. So then you're taking your vitamin D, your multivitamins, your magnesium, your potassium, you name it, you're taking it. Yeah. And you know, I don't rattle, but sometimes I feel like I do. Yes. Yeah. We also have what we call our quarterly magazine, which is the circulator. So now that's one of them, and it's a great magazine that is for all our transplant recipients, and it's got lots of stories in it. It gives you lots of ideas, but that's actually, you know, it informs people that what they're going through is normal. It's normal for us. It's not normal for people on the outside. And we share our stories. Yeah. And we actually also support quite a few regional groups. We sponsor them having their morning tea, and that's just getting people together and getting, you know, knowing that what they're going through, that they're not alone as well. I always believe in giving back, and I always say I'm back for a reason, but I'm actually a little bit of a daredevil as well. There was myself and 3 other transplant recipients. 2 had double lung transplants and 1 had a heart transplant. One decided, or had an idea, let's go skydiving and make it a fundraiser. So sort of through the end of COVID and everything, we had to change it a few times, but on Christmas Eve last year, there was 5 of us all together that went skydiving. And I turned mine into a fundraiser, and I raised $2,700. Yes, yeah. We also have a Respite House up at Barmer near Echuca, and that is purposely built for people who've had heart or lung transplant, because there was no respite for anyone to just go somewhere. You know, you see a lot of the cancer wellness centres, they have respite houses. So this house was purposely built by a gentleman called Bill Vickers, and he'd had a heart transplant. And with a group of friends who'd had heart and lung transplants, they decided, yep, we can build a house. So Bill actually donated his half a block of land, and it was purposely built by a lot of fundraising, a few government grants, and I actually do the bookings for the Heart to Heart House. So I like to keep my fingers in pies. Yes. Yeah. So we have lots of people and families that actually go up and visit it, and it's mainly just to recover, recoup, respite, and you come back refreshed. Yeah. And it's a beautiful home, has a veranda. I've got some brochures there, and it's got a veranda all the way around. You can follow the sun. Yeah. And it's up near Echuca, about 15 minutes from Echuca, so you can just do your sightseeing, and the cost to stay there is $15 a night. Yeah. And as I said, I used to be a registered builder, so I actually moved into my 13th home last year. My lucky 13. Challenging with COVID as well. Yes, yeah. So as I said, I'm now 13 years old, technically a teenager, and I try to live life to the fullest. Yeah, and I live every day to the fullest. Yeah, I pack as much in one day that I can, because you never know. You know, I've got friends who I've lost along the way, and that's been really tough. But we've also been on bonus time. I've been on bonus time 13 years. I know people have been on bonus time for 20 years. And I know people have been on bonus time for only about 6 months. So I just believe in giving back and being kind. And just wanted to say that I honour my donor every day. Yeah. So in my time of getting that call on that Friday morning, the emotions that you go through is overwhelming. But it's not as overwhelming as the people who's lost their family member in their time of grief, but they have honoured that person's choice to be an organ donor. Yeah. So I've turned, over the years I have made all my friends be organ donors, my family, so many people, and people say, oh look, they wouldn't want anything, but my mum passed away young, and she was an organ donor, yeah. And even, just skin tissue, and I've got friends who have had cornea transplants, as I said, heart transplant, lung transplant, pancreas, kidneys, and yeah. I always say, don't bring your organs to heaven, because heaven knows we need them here.
Would anybody like to ask a question? Yes, Helen.
Yes.
Did you get COVID? And if you did, how did you cope?
Yes, I did get COVID. The Easter Bunny brought COVID to my house. I live alone, but I actually was doing a job through NDIS, and the young boy that I was looking after, I would look after him once a month as an overnighter. He gave me COVID. So right on Easter, I did get COVID. I was really sick, and I had to go to the Monash COVID centre across the road from Monash Hospital, and I did 3 days of infusions. So I was allowed to leave the house to drive myself there and drive myself back. So there were antiviral infusions, yeah. But after that 3 days, I was okay. But I'm lucky enough that I haven't had any type of long-term COVID. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes. You mentioned mental and emotional side effects. What were they for you?
I felt very alone. Yeah. That even though I was married at the time, I was the loneliest person in the world. Yeah.
And I've read things where people get flashbacks from what they assume is the donor. Do you have anything like that?
A lot of people do say that you can take on the characteristics of your donor. I actually cook differently. I think my donor was a chef.
Oh, wow.
Because I can make a meal out of nothing. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes, yeah. I love cooking. Yeah. And I put my secret ingredient in my cooking, and that's called love. Yeah. I actually have an elderly friend, Mickey. I've known Mickey since I was 17. Mickey's now 87. So we've had a very long friendship. So I go, during COVID, Mickey had, through as a care service, she was having a cleaner coming in every 2 weeks, but then during COVID, she didn't want anyone coming in. Mickey still hasn't had COVID, so she's very lucky. So she said to me, I used to do house cleaning, I've done a bit of everything. And she said, Martina, would you come be my cleaner every 2 weeks? I said, of course I would. And I said, I'm happy to do it. And she said, no, I want to pay you for it. And she said, the Care Connect service will pay. I said, I don't want to be paid because I would do it regardless. So I was doing that for Mickey for 18 months. And then she said, okay, Martina, I know how busy you are. She said, I'm going to get Care Connect to do my cleaning again. So 2 weeks later, they didn't turn up. 2 weeks later, they didn't turn up. And then the next time she said, oh, Martina, can you just do it one more time? I said, of course I will. So, and then she said to me that they're coming the following week. I said, I bet you $2 they don't turn up. And I lost the bet. They did turn up, but it was 2 men that came to do her cleaning, and they don't make beds. They didn't make beds, and that's the main thing that she needs to start doing. Make the bed, change the sheets, make the bed, vacuum, cleaning. So I still do Mickey's cleaning, and I cook dinner for her every second Tuesday as well. So last night we had sanchoy bao. Yeah. So I do say I've taken on the characteristics of my donor. So my donor was a lady, and she was about 3 years older than me. So I'm 3 ages all at one time. Yeah.
Lovely. Anybody else have a question?
So, I'm interested in how long is the person who's had the longest heart transplant without dying?
I think about 25 years. Yes.
I think was it the girl who had the first one here had to get another one?
Yes, she's had a second transplant. Yes. Yeah.
And do they work reasonably well?
They do, yes. I have a few friends that have had second transplants. Yeah.
And the prognosis for life after that is?
It's a gift.
Oh, well, yes, anything.
Yeah.
But
It's
there's
a bonus.
no reason it wouldn't be as successful or reasonably successful as the first, or?
Well, I've got a friend, Sam, who also went skydiving with me, and Sam struggled with Sam and I did rehab together in September 2009, but he struggled for quite a few years, probably 5-6 years, and then he had a second transplant, and he's going fabulous now. Yeah. I've got a girlfriend, Tony, that I met one day in one of the waiting rooms in the endocrinologist. That's where you go and get infusions, iron infusions. And we were going to Thailand, and I had a travel agent ring me, and that's when they used to send you tickets in the mail. So I was saying my address, and I said Berwick, and the lovely girl was sitting across from me, and she said, "Oh, I didn't mean to be eavesdropping, but I live in Berwick too," she said. And I said, "Oh, going on holidays to Thailand." And she said, "Well, what are you in for?" And I said, "I've had a double lung transplant. I'm having an iron infusion." And Tony said, "She's on the waiting list for a double lung transplant." And we've been friends ever since. Yeah.
Lovely.
Lovely. Well, I'm sure we've all enjoyed your presentation. It's been very informative.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to, there must be things I'd like to ask you, but I think they've all been asked in one way or another. I suppose the challenge of recovery, at what level do you think you're functioning at now compared to, normal?
150%.
That's where you are, is it? Well, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the only thing that remains for me to do is to ask you if you would permit us to pray for you.
Thank you.
I'm
That would
happy
be
to do
wonderful.
that, eh? And it's been a delight to have you here, and Sharon's going to make a little presentation, I'm sure, in a moment on behalf of everybody. But it's really been informative. We certainly appreciate the fact that you sense that you have been brought back for a purpose, and kindness has been a large part of that purpose. You've been helping people, supporting people, and giving back to people, and I think that's a godly thing to do. Father, we thank you for Martina's life. We thank you for her second life, her born again experience, if you like, Lord. And we just pray you will continue to give her strength to do the things that she's doing, to support people and to help them. And we thank you for her time here today. And we pray a hand over her family, that she might continue to enjoy her children and her grandchildren. In Jesus' name, amen.